Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about CNN has Chris Cuomo right now is out, indefinitely pending an investigation, because of his brother's antics. Not only his brother's antics, but how he worked with his brother, which they knew to some degree that you knew that they were advising each other, which their brothers, like some people are like their brothers, they would do anything for their brother, whatever, but he's still a journalist. This was a big story. He had the governor on his show a lot while they were doing these little skits and stuff. So anyway, CNN has decided that he was not as honest and forthcoming, which who knows if CNN is being honest about how much they knew he was involved with his brother and trying to kind of not only advise him on how to deal with the sexual assault allegations that were coming out, but also going and using his connections to look into the women making the allegations. So CNN has done something temporarily noble, and we will see how that goes because they've suspended people before and still brought them back. Mr. Tubin, who was tubing himself on a Zoom call with coworkers there, and he's still analyzing right now on CNN. They brought him back. So we'll see what happens with that, but we're going to talk about that a little bit in CNN's reaction or their statement on it. Right now, well, I guess not right now, but earlier, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments about a case in Mississippi. It was being challenged before the Supreme Court. It's a 15-week abortion ban. And so, of course, people are shrieking today on the left. It's pretty crazy, though, to also see never Trumpers who have now, like Jennifer Rubin, for example, who are compromising totally who they are and everything that they stood for conservatism now, just because they have gone down this dark path because they hated Trump for whatever reasons that they decided that they have to hate Trump. And now they've just conformed to this, I don't know, this massive type of person or ball of angry leftists that they have to still appeal to, and they're still trying to have their street cred of where they've come from, but they're no longer who they used to be. It must be crazy to have that much power and be Donald Trump, have so many people that it's like basically a religion that I don't mean the people who are for him, but the people who are against him, that he makes your sun go up, the moon, glow brightly. Everything is revolved around this man so much that he can fundamentally change who you are. And I don't get it. As someone who voted for him twice, I don't understand how you can allow a person to have that much power for you. Presidents come and go, but they just make people crazy. So yeah, there's some never Trumpers saying some crazy stuff out here today. And of course, there's just people on the left saying some crazy stuff out here today. Joy Reid and other people saying some crazy stuff out here today as they clasp on so tightly to Roe v. Wade and abortion. I'm sort of a bit of a pessimist about it. Like I really, I fight as hard as I can and debate with people about this all the time. At one point in time, I had a viral video on TikTok that got over 1 million views, and that became like the topic of my channel. So I've had so many conversations with people regarding pro-life issues, and I find abortion to be such a heinous evil today that is just really unforgivable for what we believe that we stand for, how much technology that we have today. We know too much about science, and we claim we care about freedom and rights and injustice. And the party of love is the one who's like, in kindness, as they say, are the ones who push for the killing of the unborn. So it's pretty crazy to me, and I really want to see it overturn, Roe v. Wade, and just abortion is abolished as much as possible. But am I optimistic that this is going to be the court that makes it happen? I can't say that I am. I'll believe it when I see it, but I want to believe it. I really want to believe it, and I really want Clarence Thomas to be there when it happens. I really, honest to God, really want that to be what happens, especially with all the drama that Joe Biden put him through when he was on that court, the high tech lynching, and gosh, it must suck really for him to be president, but. Wouldn't it be great that despite everything that Biden did back then to sit on the Supreme Court through all your career there and be there as Roe v. Wade is overturned, this astronomically evil thing, knowing that he's someone who is so conservative. So that would be great. That would fill my heart with so much joy. Actually, my funny today is a meme of Clarence Thomas. But we'll be talking about that and some of the reactions with that as well. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you all to go blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. I did just post an article not too long ago about like drama that I've had with people about my Blues Clues video talking. I'm duetting Steve Burns. Now, the actor who played Steve on Blues Clues originally. Now, a duet on TikTok works. You're duetting someone else's video. So it's his video. I'm not talking to him. I don't know if he's seen my video. Though it has made a lot of rounds. On TikTok, it's over 340,000 views on TikTok. Honest to God, I'm surprised that didn't get banned. Or flagged. It didn't even get flagged yet. I was really surprised. I mean, God's working in that. And on Facebook, it's gotten over 500, almost 570,000 views on Facebook, which a lot of haters like started sharing it. So that's where some of my hate mail has come in. So anyway, the point of the video, if you've seen it, and I'm not about to play it on here, you can go find it. But it's, I guess, my most popular one that I posted on my Black Tea page. The point of the video is, hey, I talk about nostalgia bait, which I didn't coin the term, by the way. I don't know who coined it, but I hear Eric July talk about it a lot. But I talk about nostalgia bait and how Blues Clues has brought Steve back to reprise his role, and he did this big like feel good, I left abruptly, I'm sorry, I'm still here, you guys helped me, blah blah blah, and people felt all these warm and fuzzies. I'm like, it was brilliant for them to do that, and a lot of people appreciate it, but I don't think that parents understand some of the things that Blues Clues is promoting nowadays. So I tried to make it to cover this topic that I think is pretty important, pretty serious, without being to be as least controversial as possible. So I purposely only mentioned like the most controversial things I thought in that segment or on the Blues Clues. So there was the pride flags that they had, the different kinds. And no, there's not a MAP flag on there, by the way, with pedophiles. A lot of people thought that, but that's not true. I pointed out the pansexual flag. Didn't talk about any other kind of identification and stuff, though I do not think you should teach gender ideology into it, but man, people are sensitive about that on TikTok, so I didn't even bother that. I just mentioned the pansexual flag, and I specifically mentioned it's not appropriate to really teach kids about having no sexual limitations, and people got offended and said, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. I'm like, it's literally what it means. If you Google it right now, it'll say no sexual limitations. And people try to say, well, it's about loving people beyond their bodies or whatever. I'm like, well, I love people beyond their bodies and their genitals, but I'm not going to sleep with them. I'm not sexually, that doesn't mean I'm going to have a sexual romantic relationship with them. So let's not pretend it doesn't have to do with sexuality, okay? Let's not play that game. They weren't friendship flags. Sorry. So people are upset about that. So I mentioned that, and I mentioned the drag queen. You're not going to convince me that drag queens are appropriate for 3-year-olds. You're not. I don't care how many drag time story hours you do. I don't care how many rainbow dildo monkeys you put in the libraries for your kids. That's a real story. That's a real thing that happened. I'm not gonna believe that it's a mainstream thing for kids. So there's that. And then also I mentioned that in the Pride Parade that was led by the drag queen, they had a list of families that they were talking about, and they talked about how you can have 2 moms, you can have 2 dads, you can have people who are trans, people who are non-binary, people who are queens and whatever. But they decided not to have a traditional sort of family with a, bio mom, bio dad, and kids. The only sort of people who you maybe suspected were straight in the entire parade were the allies, and that was all the way to number 9. It was just 2 people. So I thought that was interesting that they decided not to showcase a traditional family, because you're making the point that all these other families are just like every other family. So why wouldn't you have a comparison with a family that you would deem as the traditional sort of standard heterosexual one that's out there in the atmosphere all the time? So people were triggered that I mentioned that, and they said, "Well, they don't need to showcase them." I'm like, "But if you're going to compare them and make it seem like it's normal, then why wouldn't you do it?" And I have my suspicion. So anyway, I wrote an article about that, the criticism that people had, and I will say, I think you should read the article because I took the time to write it. You can go read that at blacktnews.com. But to me, it just seems like people are really taking it too personal, because there's a lot of people in my comments, especially like on TikTok, um, who are LGBT and who do follow me, by the way, who are actual followers because we share similar ideology. They at least like my presentation if they sway a little differently. Who believe that is not age appropriate content for preschoolers being 3 to 5. Um, so there's that. They're with me, but there's people, mostly when I look at people who are upset, who will comment, they're like 15 to 23 people who are transgender, and they're taking it way too personal. It's not about you, it's not about your ego, it's about kids at a time where they're the most vulnerable. Well, not maybe not the most vulnerable, and the woman would be the most vulnerable, but they're very vulnerable, they're incredibly malleable. And Nickelodeon and the writers at Nickelodeon and the activists at Nickelodeon or wherever else, because it's not just Nickelodeon that does stuff like this, people feeling that they have the right or they have the audacity, maybe they don't have the right, but they have the audacity to supersede something that parents should really talk about and discuss with their kids. And they feel that that is their place to indoctrinate them in however they feel the world is supposed to be. That's actually the conversation. And it we've had conversations like this in regards to sex, in regards to identities, in regards to stuff like critical race theory. People feel like parents shouldn't have a say. People were so mad about conversations with parental rights in Virginia, and it didn't work out too well for Democrats, and they're still trying to make that a big argument going forward. Well, they can do that, but they're going to keep losing. So if you don't agree with me, whether it's age appropriate, whatever, but I thought it was appropriate to let parents know, and most people thanked me for letting them know. So I do address some of those criticisms. So if you would like to read that article, I think it's important because it does lay out some other things that I think are pretty important, especially like when I explain the bit about the traditional families and them leaving that out. Um, there is an attack on the idea of like a nuclear family. Black Lives Matter, for example, in their What We're About page, said that they wanted to disrupt the nuclear family. They also said they wanted to dismantle cisgender privilege. And if you ever looked up what cisgender privilege is, it could be something like women going to women's prisons and men going to men's prisons. They want to dismantle something like that and make sure that if you are a man and you identify as a woman, that you should be able to go in the women's prison. That is something like that is considered cisgender privilege. And I'm not saying that BLM specifically wants to dismantle that particular thing, but that is an example of the dismantling of cisgender privilege. That is something they would consider along those lines. So they did eventually take this What We're About page down on BLM's page. They had it up for a long time, and the internet is forever, and I have not forgotten. I have never forgotten. And they've just transferred these ideas into curriculum that they want to push in different schools. So BLM isn't the only people that do that. But you have to realize that a lot of these, like, hustlers and grifters with the racial stuff and the intersectionality stuff, it's very much connected. As a matter of fact, the queen of intersectionality, Kimberly Crenshaw, she's one of the people who founded critical race theory. Is that all a conspiracy theory? A lot of it connects, guys. A lot of it always connects. So anyway, it's a good article, and like basically everything I just mentioned is in it. Go ahead and read it. Go ahead and share it around. And that's the kind of content at Black Teen News. So if you would like to support Black Teen News, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate. Whatever you can do to help obviously helps the channel, helps the website, helps us grow. So please consider leaving a donation if you like different content that I share every day, if you like, the show when I get up and talk, or if you like different articles, especially, I do talk about critical race theory a lot, but I think that is a particularly evil thing in our country. So if you like that content, please consider supporting in that way. I appreciate you guys sharing my stuff on social media. All my social media handles are at Black Tea News. Except on Twitter, it's at True Black Tea, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. So share all the stuff around. Make sure that you're following me on different social media platforms. I do want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC. I'm in their studio today. If I say something that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. I'm just using the space. I thank you for being here. As always, it's a pleasure. They do great work helping to elect candidates. It's oh so very important. Big politics, small politics, all politics are local, and they pay attention to people who don't always get the attention that they deserve in races. So I appreciate the work that they do, and I like being here in the studio. That's why I'm here all the time. And also, please check out different merchandise that we have on the website. I'm just going to show a few things so we can get to other content. News of the day. So make sure that you guys are checking out those things. I also do have books that you want to check out. They are available. You can check out the link on where to get them on blackteennews.com as well. So the first thing I want to talk about this before I show the funny of the day, because it's really like the meat of my story. I do want to give a brief update. Before the show started, I was watching the update news conference of Sheriff Mike Bouchard in Michigan. He's Oakland County Sheriff. Oxford High School did have a shooter the other day, and at the time there were 3 deaths, but there was another fatality. So there are 4 who are gone. The shooter is being charged as an adult with murder. It seems like also terrorism as well, but they do not know from at least from the press conference as of right now. They're not sure totally of the motive of the shooter. The shooter, he's lawyered up. Apparently, the parents are advising him not to talk. There's plenty of stuff that they're going to charge him on, being able to find out in the investigation. The parents of the victims right now are asking people to just kind of chill out. They said right now they're really overwhelmed, and the way the sheriff described it was wolves at the door. So respect their privacy. Obviously, if you're from Michigan, I'm like, this is really close to where I am, and so it is definitely news. But please, there's a lot of rumors and stuff circulating. There's a lot that they tried to correct the record on, things that they're still investigating. They said they're looking into every single thing because they'd rather have too much than too little, but it does take away resources. So they're still interviewing the students. They were there looking at the security cameras, looking at leads on social media and other things like that. So they are compiling a case that obviously this person will be convicted of, as they are charged as an adult, but it is a tragedy. One thing that I noticed, the press did try to make it a little political, asking a question, because the prosecutor, which Oakland County is now pretty Democrat controlled, but I guess the prosecutor said something about gun control the other day. And so Sheriff Bouchard, he said, look, the thinking with gun laws, if you're in law enforcement and stuff, we have a lot of stuff on the books that people, it's not enforced. He said, if you break gun laws, he said, I want to see you do some hard time. That people will have a gun that they have illegally, and they will plead down, and it'll be a misdemeanor, and then they'll go off and do something again. And we see in different parts of the country where lax amount of crime have led to some, and bail reform have led to some really big other tragedies, like in Wisconsin last Sunday night with the parade, which CNN is like, oh, a car mass drove into a parade. It's like, did the car do that, or was there a person who did that? I'm pretty sure it was a person who did that and not a car. We don't need car control. We need to not let criminals out for $1,000 so they can go run rampages on grandmothers and children. So he said we have a lot of laws in the books, but we don't have people actually being prosecuted when they do these things. When you go and you get a gun, there are systems to check and make sure that, hey, that you're not supposed to get one. And then there's people who aren't prosecuted for trying. Joe Biden, initiated this big task force, had this big announcement in the summer, and they're like, we're going to make sure that we're looking at people and doing this. And it's like, okay, but the president's son lied on a form to possess a gun. and is there any repercussions for Hunter Biden? Of course there's not. Of course there's not. So they're still investigating. Obviously, there's no justification for this kind of senseless brutality. They did say they don't see any history of like him being bullied or anything like that. Or what they said at the press conference, they don't see anything in the history that maybe that's jumping out at them, that this was like something that was evident that was going to happen. But they're still investigating, and it's good to have these sort of investigations to know what you can do in a situation like this. They did have, drills. The police responded quickly. But some things you just have to be prepared. It's just the nature of the world that we live in, that there's so many people who do not value human life. And we're always going to have monsters among our midst. And we just have to try to make sure that we raise people to value life, which I suppose we're going to segue into the bigger picture, to a different picture later, in the topic of regards to the value of life. But I've heard some things that I haven't totally confirmed, from people who were at the high school and so on. But I'm gonna not talk about them until we know that that they're not rumors, because I don't want to be part of this rumor spread gang. So it's a senseless tragedy. I hope the media does chill out and aren't stalking these poor people. We know in a lot of situations like this, people are running to make things super political, and there's people who take that bait. But obviously everything that he did was illegal one way or another, and he will be charged accordingly as an adult. So there's a little update, and I'm sure there will be more to come as they investigate it. But thank you to the Oakland County Sheriff Department, and I hope Godspeed to the prosecutors. Godspeed to the prosecutors of this case. And I know the parents they're trying to protect their kid, but they should just try to cooperate, in my opinion. Okay, so got the heavy stuff out of the way. I guess before I get to my funny thing that I want to show, because that goes to the bigger sort of story with the pro-life situation. It's a Clarence Thomas meme. Let's talk about Cuomo and CNN. CNN, they've had some issues. Actually, they've had a lot of issues ever since Trump was gone. I mean, they had their January 6th stuff to go off of a while, but that's, this people are still like crazy about that, but it doesn't really have the same steam. So they've been losing viewers for a long time. And Cuomo is like their big top guy, yet they're still trailing behind like Maddow, and they're really trailing behind people on Fox. So it is probably a big blow to them to suspend Chris Cuomo, um, who would have these comedy routines with his brother during the pandemic, even though they had this big crisis, them covering up the nursing home scandal, which is really why Andrew Cuomo should have resigned. And we have yet to see how he will be held accountable for putting the most vulnerable of the COVID crisis, exposing them to COVID, and then covering up. I don't even understand. I still don't understand people who would make decisions like this, because it was always obvious that our elderly were the most vulnerable with the COVID. But in my opinion, in my opinion, they let the sexual assault scandals reach a certain um, height, so he would resign over those, so they could not draw attention to this nursing home scandal and these people dying in this manner. And one, because obviously it's really bad. I mean, they did try to cover it up. And right-wing media was talking about it very early on, and then the mainstream media started talking about it. But also there's other Democrat governors, people who have big hopeful dreams, I think, later on in life about where they can go, um, who also did the same thing. Particularly in Michigan, Whitmer's, I think, is a hopeful who has bigger aspirations than just being the governor, which is a pretty big job. But she was hopeful to be Joe Biden's VP, and I think she would, if she feels that she does well in Michigan, I think she's going to have higher aspirations to go to DC as well. So, I, it if it got really big in the mainstream media talking about these nursing home scandals day by day by day while he was still the governor, it was going to draw a lot of light to other people. Um, well, Newsom did it, and they did it in New Jersey and somewhere else too. Which in New Jersey, that did almost get him dinged too, but they held on to that seat. Republicans should have been more aggressive. Could have won that seat. Obviously, they could have won it. It was close, but they could have won that seat. Um, but in Michigan, I think they really want to prop up Whitmer to be like a next. They think that she has a big future, and hopefully she doesn't have much of a future in Michigan as far as being governor, and she's overtaken. But I think this is something that could have dinged other people. So I think the sexual assault allegations, which there was evidence that they weren't just allegations, um, uh, I think that's why they let that blow up to that regard. Because this is obviously something that was a culture for the Cuomo. But it blew up. And of course, the AG had her own aspirational goals of being governor, and she went after him. And she's obviously announced that she wants to run. And all these people they're opportunistic, and they lie about themselves, but they are honest usually about each other, and the vicious ways that they go after each other. So there's some opportunistic stuff going on behind the scenes too. Don't get me wrong, but I think it blew up for to protect everybody else from the nursing home scandal. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. To me, it seems obvious, but that's my opinion. So anyway, Andrew, his brother Chris, is an anchor at CNN. And Chris, as the sexual assault allegations and stuff came out, he's like, I'm not gonna talk about it. Obviously, it's happening. It just sucks. So then information came out that he was advising his brother, but recently it's come out how much he was advising his brother. So not only we just know about text messages, we don't know what kind of things happened on conference calls and how intense it got. But not only was he advising them, he was also like using his media pool to find out things about them. So CNN has decided to suspend Chris Cuomo again. He's one of their big anchors, and I, I was still a little surprised that it happened. People were saying there is a deal right now with like Time Warner and Discovery. So people think with all this scandal right now, it's possible that they're probably not going to employ him. And there could be some other kind of shakeups at CNN and stuff too. We'll just have to see what goes down because their ratings are not good and they need to do something. They need to do something. Though CNN, I was listening to Tim Pool the other day and he was laying out how just YouTube allowing CNN to have front homepage space gets them a lot of money. Gets them a lot of money because they get a lot of views, they get a lot of plays, they have advertisements, obviously, and they get a lot of subscribers that way by pushing CNN content on the very first page on YouTube, like all the time. So they're making up in other ways in digital media, and the people over some of the big platforms are still going to try to help legacy media. And some of the ways that they're cracking down, like Twitter announced some new measures the other day that some independent media are very concerned about. So they're going to continue to push people like CNN. So maybe CNN will survive in the long run, I guess. But this Chris Cuomo thing is going to punch him for a little while. So CNN said it suspended Chris Cuomo. I'm reading from Variety's article about this. CNN said it suspended Chris Cuomo indefinitely pending further evaluation following new disclosures about how he helped his brother, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, in the midst of a scandal over sexual harassment allegations, a move that leaves the Warner Media Network without services of its most watched anchor. The New York Attorney General's office released transcripts exhibits Monday that shed new light on Chris Cuomo's involvement in his brother's defense. The documents, which we were not privy to before their public release, so they say, raises serious questions. When Chris admitted to us that he had offered advice to his brother's staff, he broke our rules, and we acknowledged that publicly. But we also appreciated the unique position he was in and understood his need to put his family first and his job second, CNN said in a statement Tuesday evening. However, these documents point to a greater level of involvement in his brother's efforts than we previously knew. As a result, we have suspended Chris indefinitely pending further evaluation. Anderson Cooper, who usually anchors CNN's 8 p.m. hour, was scheduled to fill in for Cuomo during his 9 p.m. slot Tuesday evening. The network did not provide further details about potential substitutes or fill-in programming. So I wonder what they'll do in the long run. Again, Tubin, who is their legal analyst, he got caught on a Zoom call pleasuring himself. And so he was suspended for a little while, but he's still there. He's back doing their really bad legal takes. So do I think this is the end of Chris? I don't know. I think CNN would like for it not to be. They had Don Lemon on the show the other night because they usually do this like buddy team up thing leading into one other show, and he's like, "You're such a great person, and they're one of the most kindest, best people I've ever known." So just really talking him up, especially as all these allegations are coming out. So maybe he just wanted to generally make his friend feel better, but awkward. Like we all know what's going on. So, and a lot of people are understanding like that is his brother, but his brother was doing pretty terrible stuff. And Chris he tried to say, well, I told him he should own up to what he did. But the text messages and stuff that's come out kind of reveals like he really advised him to stay in there and it was going after ladies. So, and then Chris has had his own sort of allegations and stuff that people haven't really talked about to light recently. But there were some allegations that came out about him. So who knows how deep this goes? I'm sure he is aware of some more detestable instances involving his brother, and no one likes to have dirty laundry like that, I guess, aired sort of out there. But it wasn't an appropriate situation to be in while he was an anchor at CNN. He could have always voluntarily stepped back, and then helped his brother. He would have been in a different position if he had done that. But he continued to be on air while his brother, who's the governor, and now former governor of New York, did all these things. They shouldn't have had them really doing the little family hour, stuff like that. to, especially while there was, it's like, are you going to address the nursing home thing, or are you going to get the giant cotton swabs out? So it's definitely interesting. I don't believe that CNN in the long run, if it's up to them, really, that I believe that they will have them back, but they are having different negotiations with Time Warner and Discovery, and I don't know what kind of shakeups they're going to have, because I do think CNN, they're looking at their ratings, and YouTube views and money is one thing, but what are they going to do about people actually watching them on TV? So there's that. But they do also have a lot of plays and stuff. They do own the international media market in a lot of places and stuff too. Like I talked to you guys about how people in Mexico, they watch CNN all the time, and they have a pretty warped view of the world, American politics. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely interesting. And I audibly gasped when I saw that he was out in the meantime, because I was genuinely surprised. So I want to show you guys the meme that someone posted with Clarence Thomas. Today, we heard oral arguments in the courts in regard to Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban bill. And so it's raised questions about viability, and it's going to have to bump into other cases, people are saying, and people think, how can you address this without addressing Roe v. Wade? So people are optimistic, always hoping that Roe v. Wade goes down. I want to be optimistic about it. I do have a bit of a wait and see, but I really, really wanted to go down. I don't know if this is the case, but they will have to address it in some regard. And I don't know. Sometimes they try to do it as little as possible. But we'll see what happens. Democrats are always flipping their lids every time there's some kind of abortion legislation or something, or some kind of ruling, talking about this will be the end of Roe and this will be the end of abortion, which, if Roe v. Wade goes down, FYI, it will go to the states. And what is on the books for your states, those will be the rules. And if your state has something that bans abortion, or your state moves to ban abortion, that is what your state decided. If it's at 15 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, that's what your state decided. And it's a terrible, evil thing, in my opinion. And for me, viability doesn't actually make a lot of sense to me as far as an argument. But though 15 weeks, that's what they're arguing right now. And they're freaking out about it. But anyway, Jack Posobiec had this tweet that I thought was pretty funny. You had Clarence Thomas as from the Matrix, as if he's Morpheus. He's like, so how do you feel about Roe v. Wade? Is it you feel that Roe v. Wade is constitutional, do you? So he opened up asking those questions, like, I know what the Second Amendment is if you bring up the Second Amendment, but I don't, like, what is your argument about Roe v. Wade and being a constitutional right? Which, honestly, a lot of people, including Ginsburg, have admitted that Roe v. Wade isn't the best legal law. People who are act like this is that's a thing that's so enshrined into our just, in our world, in our laws, it hasn't been there for that long. It's been longer than I've been alive, for sure, but not longer than those judges have been alive on the Supreme Court. So time's a little different in their perspective. So it's not something that's been a long-standing rule, but there's been other bad rulings that's been overturned, like Dred Scott, for example. So it's not a super precedent, because if it was a super precedent, we've been talking about it all the darn time. But there's been a ton of people who have said that it's not good legal standing. Jack Posobiec had a funny tweet. He said it's Roe v. Wade is legal fan fiction. So here's just a little bit of Clarence Thomas pushing back or asking questions like, do you feel, how is this constitutional?
General, would you specifically tell me, state what the right is? Is it specifically abortion? Is it liberty? Is it autonomy? Is it privacy?
The right is grounded in the liberty component of the 14th Amendment, Justice Thomas, but I think that it promotes interests in autonomy, bodily integrity, liberty, and equality. And I do think that it is specifically the right to abortion here, the right of a woman to be able to control without the state forcing her to continue a pregnancy, whether to carry that baby to term.
I understand we're talking about abortion here, but what is confusing is that if we were talking about the Second Amendment, I know exactly what we're talking about. If we're talking about the Fourth Amendment, I know what we're talking about because it's written, it's there. What specifically is the right here that we're talking about?
Well, Justice Thomas, I think that the court in those other contexts with respect to those other amendments has had to articulate what the text means and the bounds of the constitutional guarantees. And it's done so through a variety of different tests that implement First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights. So I don't think that there is anything unprecedented or anomalous about the right that the court articulated in Roe and Casey and the way that it implemented that right by defining the scope of the liberty interest by reference to viability and providing that that is the moment when the balance of interest tips and when the state can act to prohibit a woman from getting an abortion based on its interest in protecting the fetal life at that point.
So the right specifically is abortion.
It's the right of a woman prior to viability to control whether to continue with a pregnancy, yes.
Thank you.
So the Supreme Court justices who are left wing are kind of like, what has changed now to even question viability, the standards that we've had. And the people who are on the pro-life side, or the lawyers are arguing, will medical advancements change what's possible for viability all the time? And that's true. That's absolutely true. Right now, like 20 people are saying like 24 weeks, but I believe a baby just survived at 21, if I'm not mistaken. So to me, I don't like the argument of viability at all, personally. It doesn't make any sense to me, which I don't hear a lot of there's pro-life people who make it. But I guess if you argue viability, most people consider themselves pro-choice up to a point. And I don't like viability. Well, one, it's viable within the mother. It's just not viable outside of the womb. But if you're going to argue viability outside of the womb, we're not at a place right now where we're ejecting fetuses because they're at 24 weeks. That's not what happened. So if your argument is also if you believe in bodily autonomy, why does it matter if it's viable? Because it's still inside the mother. Like, they kind of brushed off fetal pain in the arguments. And so if you're arguing that up to a point where the child is viable, it can feel pain, and it would be cruel to kill them at this point, taking the measures to end their life, that's a different argument. But if you're arguing that that it's viable, therefore it should survive, if it's still in the mother, what does it matter? What does it matter if you're still arguing for bodily autonomy? Because we don't have a practice of, I don't want it in me anymore. I waited 22 weeks, so let's eject it and see if it survives on its own, and battle of the fittest. Like, that's not what we do. So to me, the viability argument doesn't really make sense. I'm very strong on my pro-life position that it's a life at conception. At conception, it is a unique individual clump of cells. I saw a great TikTok the other day of someone who worked in a biology lab, and he said, we actually monitored clusters of cells, and clusters of cells are different than an organism that is working all together into this form versus a bunch of clusters of cells. It's basically like big heaps of salt. That's just things getting bigger, but they're not interconnecting. It's not an advanced organism working together. It's extraordinarily different than a baby developing. So even saying, like, I think Ben Shapiro pretty much made the line famous when people say, well, it's just a clump of cells, and he's like, you're a clump of cells, dude. So that's what most people will retort back to people when they say it's just a clump of cells, and they'll say, well, you're a clump of cells. But it's not really even accurate in scientifically accurate anyway. So I thought it was an interesting point. But anyway, at conception, you are a unique individual, with your own DNA. Things about you genetically, those things are determined at the moment of your conception, and everything that people say that you need to be considered a life, with your brain function and your heartbeats and all this stuff, all those things are rapidly developing. So you're really arguing time at that point, because everything is in motion. Everything is in motion at that point. In the natural process, unless there's some kind of tragedy that happens, is going to lead to birth. Like people say you're forced birth. No, it's natural. The only force now would be you having the abortion. It is absolutely natural. Once the conception has started, that it is inevitable that a baby will be popped out of you. And more often than not, it goes off without a cinch. It's been happening since the beginning of humanity. So it's a life at conception. Therefore, it should be protected because we have a right to life. We have a right to life. So there's been people making all kinds of arguments that bring up, well, how can you be pro death penalty? Which that varies. You don't have to just be there's people on the right who aren't pro death penalty. But how can you be pro death penalty and pro life? Which pro life means you're against abortion. And you're against abortion because you believe that the unborn are entitled to the right to life. It doesn't mean that you are a pacifist in all situations. It doesn't mean that you have to vote for Build Back Better so they can fund childcare, government childcare. That's not what that means. People on the left try to make that what it means. That's not what it means. It means you're pro-life means that you oppose abortion. And you oppose abortion because you believe the child has a right to life. That's what it means. If you want to call us anti-abortion, I don't mind that because I am anti-abortion. But the pro-choice people, they're not pro-choices. They're pro-choice to have abortion. So if you want to call me anti-abortion, you want to call them pro-abortion, we can do that. But they really don't like that term. They really don't like that term. I'm not offended if you call me anti-abortion. I am anti-abortion. But just FYI, that's why we're pro-life. But back to the death penalty, we give criminals on death row who've killed people, raped people, pillaged people, whatever they did, we give them more consideration than we do to innocent little babies. At least they had due process to determine whether their life could be taken from them, from the state, because of whatever crime they committed. At least there was some kind of due process that they had to determine that. Babies in the womb, they are totally at the whims of whatever the woman decides. This secret right to choice, it's silly to me because we don't respect everyone's choices. Sometimes people make bad choices. But the value of life should not scale. So we take whatever case that we can get. And this case is going to bump up against other cases. We'll see. Ultimately, people are saying that they're not probably going to decide or have a ruling out till maybe the spring on this. But people are freaking out, as the left always freaks out. But it doesn't seem like the pro-choice lawyers did a great job. But maybe at the end of the day, they didn't need to, because the left-wingers are still left-wing. And well, I guess the arguments will really just determine whether or not how some of the justices are going to go. So people are eyeing Kavanaugh. Jack Poseback, he had a really good tweet, another really good tweet. He said, if you don't vote the right way, no calendar will save you. So we'll see what he does, what Barrett does, Gorsuch does, these new additions on the court. But gosh, as I said earlier, as I opened up, it would be so fantastic if Clarence Thomas could preside over the dismantling of Roe v. Wade, especially given his history. with him coming in and Joe Biden sneering at him, and that high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas with the accusations, everything they did to try to get him not on the court, and the fact that he still was able to get on the court. He's been there for obviously a very long time, and to me, it's just like not even justice that Joe Biden is president right now, and but that he's still on the court, and if he could still preside over the court while Roe v. Wade was dismantled, that would be such an amazing legacy. That would be such an amazing legacy, and that would be some justice in the darn world. That would be some justice in the darn world. I want to show you guys this picture. Daily Wire had like 2 headlines of the pro-life side versus the pro-choice side. So on one side, you got pro-life people singing the national anthem, and the pro-abortion protesters allegedly taking abortion-like pills outside of the Supreme Court. So those are which side are you with? People, singing God bless, I'm sorry, the Star Spangled Banner, or people who are taking abortion pills. We don't celebrate abortion, so they say. So they say. Like I said, I go back and forth with a lot of people on this topic, and to me, it's normally there's women. Granted, TikTok sways very young, but it's really sad to me. And some of these young girls have had abortions, but how it's twisted to me and sad to me how much people feel that they need it. It's heartbreaking how much they feel that they need it. It's amazing, and I was working on this article and it got deleted accidentally, so I'm retyping it, but it's amazing to me how much there's a push for like the future is female and these female superheroes that they act like we've never had female icons in the past, and this is like a new thing, and they want to make like the new Marvel universe their new person instead of Captain America that they're uplifting Iron Man. Their rock styles now are WandaVision was a big hit, but really Captain Marvel is the person they're trying to push forward, and you have all these other female icons that it's like Star Wars had with Rey, and if you don't like it, then these people attack you and you're some kind of sexist, and they're protecting these women because they want everyone to look toward these ladies to build the future with. And it's like, in reality though, you're not teaching women that they are strong, that they are capable, when you also at the same time say you need to have this abortion to finish high school, to finish grad school. That the thing that you are biologically engineered to do, and that's not all you are being a mom, but this thing that this miracle that you uniquely can do. Men can't do it, you can do it. As a matter of fact, you like to exclude men because no uterus, no opinion. So you would acknowledge that this is a very special, unique thing. But instead of celebrating it, they use that to exclude men from having an opinion at all and just silence them and shame them if they want to stand up and do a moral thing and say, hey, don't sacrifice your child. We set women up with all these issues like it would be the worst thing in the world if they raised a family, or if they just carried it for 9 months and found a loving family, maybe a family that could not have a child, and give that child over to them. I have a friend who adopted. They had a medical emergency and motherhood was gone, and then they were able to adopt. It's a beautiful process. But we empower women. We convince women it is empowering to kill their own children. And you have all these young women who are so desperate and convinced they need to do this. it used to be safe, legal, and rare because, I don't know, that sounded more palpable, I guess, though it never really made sense. But that was their slogan. But now they want to totally remove the stigma from it. They're SNL doing their clown abortion skit. You had Michelle Wolf doing her salute to abortion. These activists at these marches get up and say it's okay to have an abortion after you have some hot sex because you don't want a baby. I am directly quoting someone. That I did not make that up. I did not make that up. Those are the sort of things that people tell you. In Congress, someone got up and testified and said abortion is love. That is madness. Why can't we tell women that you are capable and you can do this? Obviously they can. They're kind of built for it. I have a friend who told me after she had her baby, or she found out she's pregnant, it was the best thing that happened to her because her life was in a downward spiral. And once she realized her life was greater than just her own, it forced her to get herself right. And she told me her baby saved her life. Her son saved her life. People who are scared to death of that moment when they see that line, that positive sign, when you're scared to death, just remember, life is not like this at all. It moves. It has its ups, it has its downs. It's dramatically can change, especially in 2021. Especially in 2021, where you can sprinkle salt on something and become an international superstar or something. There's a person who got famous for putting their hair in a man bun. What about the bed intruder guy? Someone broke into their house and tried to like rape his sister. Then someone else, he was on the news. Someone else took the newscast, made a song with autotune and stuff. And then that person made enough money to move their family out of the ghetto. Life is not stagnant. It moves. I was watching MasterChef one time, and I don't know if this woman's pro-life or not, but she was talking about how she was pregnant in Chicago winter with no house and was living in her car. A couple of years later, she's married to a military man, and on MasterChef, she was number 2. End up being the runner-up. You just never know how life is going to move. So all these people who get up, like Michelle Williams, hold up her Golden Globe or whatever it is, and like, I couldn't be who I was without this. Are you sure? I know that's what you're telling people. And maybe your life would be different, but that doesn't mean it would be less significant or it wouldn't be valuable. And it doesn't mean that your child was invaluable. Of course it was valuable. It was worth a darn Golden Globe to you. But they have to convince women to do this because we have so many medical industries that profit off of women doing this. And that's another thing that just puzzles me too, that don't you realize that people are convincing you to do this because there's profit in it. There's profit in it. I do want to play this little clip at the of Joy Reid. The craziest part isn't to the very end, so bear with me. But she had a segment and they were talking about the case.
So for you, who has an organization that is actively trying to protect women in this instance, what happens if they overturn it?
I mean, what happens if they overturn it is we have to do what the Republicans have been so amazing at. We have to really be laser focused on what is happening in our state legislatures, because these laws are being passed in our state legislatures and have been the entire time. And Joy, it was so interesting to watch your previous segment, because as we talk about the insurrectionists and the people who just do not care at all about the rule of law, when you look at Mississippi and how this case got to the Supreme Court, the lower court, the Fifth Circuit, the most conservative court in the land, twice said, you know what? This isn't going to pass muster. And the state of Mississippi and the extreme conservatives there went to the Supreme Court to say, we want a hearing, and they got one. And that should make everyone take a pause, right? And so folks learning about who are the legislatures, who are the governors in your state, who are the people who are running solely on this issue, because so many of them are, and looking the intersections of those people and white supremacy and how they feel about guns and how they feel about all this stuff. And I think that it's all intersectional and we need to pay attention closely.
White supremacy rears its ugly head once again. I've talked about this before, but there are people who have that talking point now that the pro-life movement is founded in white supremacy. And at first I would just laugh at it. And but then I realized that, and I would mock people who brought it up. But then I realized that this is like not a fringe thing. This is like the new talking point that they're going along with now, that it's rooted in some kind of white supremacy. So the thinking is that pro-life people realized, oh my gosh, our populations of white people will be overturned if we keep killing our babies. So let's not do that. Let's make it so people don't kill babies anymore. What? Okay. Let's say that's the case. Let's say that's true. Why aren't the minority groups like, oh my gosh, let's stop killing our babies? Because black population in the U.S. has been pretty stagnant. It's like at 12.1. I think maybe got to 12.2, and then it's like 12.1 again. Like, it's been stagnant. Other ones have gone up and down. Like, it's stagnant. It's not because people aren't, doing it, but people are killing the babies. So I don't understand. It's like people hate white supremacy so much that you can say something is white supremacy, and you could say, hey, it's white supremacy if you don't jump off that cliff. And then people will be like, well, bet I hate white supremacy, so let me go jump off this cliff right now to fight white supremacy. Like, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. So the white people were smart enough to go, oh, we should stop killing our babies. And now we have people like in Congress and even our presidents, everyone's saying we need abortion for the minorities. And you're not going, oh yeah, that's eugenics. It's so amazing. It's so amazing that this is the world we live in. And no one's just putting the pieces together at all. So, yeah, I don't know what to do with this world today, guys. But again, I think it's sick that people are pushing it so much and making women feel so incapable of motherhood. And then I really, really, really hate, it's a pet peeve of mine. I hate when men are just like, it's not my place. I'm like, why? Like, if you're not going to be the protector of children, of your prodigy, what do you even have your genitals, your manhood for? Like, what is it for? If you're gonna be that much of a punk, what is it even for, dude? To not stand up? To just be nagged into a corner and just stay silent? Are you kidding me? Well, that's their body. It's not their body. That's the whole point of the darn abortion. To kill the baby inside and get rid of it. That's the whole entire point. My body, my choice is their catchphrase, is their slogan, and it doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Bodily autonomy, which Clarence Thomas did mention and brought that up to, I guess, Jedi mind trick them a bit. to get to the point where like babies have heartbeats and other stuff. They have a body. What about their bodily autonomy? Because when you talk about abortion, it's actually not a bodily autonomy issue because you are determining the future and the life of someone else. Someone else. But to all you bodily autonomy people out there pro-abortion, please tell me why you are so pro-mandate, so pro-lockdown, so pro-mask. I can tell you abortion is way deadlier than COVID. I absolutely can. It's much more effective. and it's really good at killing kids. Really good at killing kids. So anyway, I really hope they're able to overturn it. I think I will do a video, obviously not today because we're past our point where our hour mark, of just going over some of the most common abortion arguments that I hear and just talking why each one doesn't make a lot of sense. Like to me, well, like I said, my body, my choice. It's not about your body. Clump of cells, already talked about that a bit. Viability, I said, doesn't really make any sense, but I can make that a little more concise, I guess. I don't want to be like a huge whole hour thing, but maybe like I'll try to chop it down in just a quick video, something to help people debate these things, I guess. But my contention is a life at conception, therefore it deserves to be protected. And for people who think or make the argument, why should it supersede the woman? They're both valuable, but I don't understand why the reasons why people think that women should be able to supersede the baby, in my opinion, is a reason why they shouldn't. Because you have a lot of choices prior to that child coming into existence, right? In most cases, I'm assuming majority of the time abortions are due to consensual sex. So majority of the time when I'm talking about these scenarios, I am talking about in consensual circumstances. So you made the decision to have sex. I'm not saying you made the decision to have unprotected sex, like you weren't on birth control, whatever. That stuff fails, but you know that can happen, right? So you have made the risk. You've assumed the risk of the sex, and you are pregnant. So your decisions and your choices, have led you to the child being formed, and you may have all these future plans and all these decisions and stuff to make, but you had all these decisions prior to that child being made. So why do you believe that you should be able to supersede its right to life? Because your choices led you to this position where you're carrying your child. I don't understand why we are just creating a world where responsibility isn't a thing. It's not healthy. If you think we're creating a world of healthy individuals, functioning individuals, we are just not. And as a matter of fact, that is why I started my show talking about how people were angry at my Blue's Clues video. And they're angry because they want a little blue dog to validate their existence. They don't care about the kids and whether they're sexualizing them too early or whether there's groomers and perverts out there trying to corrupt them, which we know there's some people out there, since the gay man's San Francisco choir literally saying we're coming for your children. But they're like, well, you know what? I'm a pansexual. Darn it, I want the 3-year-olds to know what I am. Because you are a weak-willed individual and your whole life is wrapped up in who you sleep with. Grow up. We're not raising a responsible, healthy generation. Not in the least bit. Not in the least bit. So we just need a big cultural change, but hopefully we can get the legal change and the cultural change, and I'll take the legal change, and then obviously we'll have to make the cultural changes. But it's a really long process. But I'm glad for states who take up this issue. I'm glad that we had, these appointments. I hope in the long run that this is a good legacy for President Trump. But we'll have to see, and we won't hear probably a decision for some time. But gosh, I really hope that Clarence Thomas gets to preside over that. I don't know if it'll be a 5-4 or 6-3. If it's 6-3, then Roberts will have to write the decision. And if it's 5-4, then Thomas will write it. I believe that's how it goes. So, if it's swaying that way, you might have Roberts write it just so Clarence Thomas doesn't write it. But if Clarence Thomas writes it, it'll probably be golden. So that's my hope. I'm not terribly optimistic because I'm just being a little bit of a pessimist about it. I don't want to get my hopes up, but that's what I would like. So anyway, thank you guys for watching today. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out the different content that I have, like the article about the Blue School thing. I just posted it. Please share it around. People were really mad about that, but I'm glad that it got so many plays, got so many hits. I'm surprised it's still on TikTok, to be honest with you. But it's still there. It's still there. Please check out different merchandise that I have on the website as well. I have my goat hoodie that people love. I do have it in different colors. I do have the Be Better Not Bitter shirt. Really like that stuff. I do also have different books that I have available for sale. Historical fiction fantasy book. See, that's another thing. People are like, you guys don't like critical race theory because you don't want to talk about racism. Dude, I wrote historical fiction fantasy. It's not the most accurate stuff in the world, no, but I think it's very fascinating. I've never met a conservative who's not like, oh, history's terrible, let's not talk about it. No one does that. We just don't like your corrupted, twisted view of America. That's your Marxism and all that other kind of stuff. Just a reminder, I did mention this earlier, but Kimberly Crenshaw, who's mother of intersectionality, also one of the people who founded critical race theory. All this stuff, it overlaps. It really does. Also got other cool things to check out, like talked about abortion, My Money, My Business, because people try to tell you to butt out of the issue while they're trying to get your taxpayer dollars to fund that stuff. Actually, Facebook did not want me to run an ad on this, so you could show them by buying the shirt. So go ahead and check out other stuff that I have on the website, including different mugs. Got the pumpkin spice season. Get it while it's still obviously in season. It's cold outside. You need to warm yourself up with this cute little chump mug. Actually, I did draw it myself, so go ahead and get that. I do also have those on shirts. And also check out Super Kid 2. Get these. They'll make great Christmas gifts if you have any kids who read chapter books. Some of you have already got it and already sent me feedback that your kids loved it, though I guess they opened it, that wasn't a Christmas gift and it was just a book. But you don't have to wait till Christmas. That's not an obligation. But thank you guys for getting it for your kids, and I'm really glad that they are enjoying it. So consider getting that. That's available on ninjadustpublishing.com, but there is a link to ninjadustpublishing.com. If you go to just blacktnews.com, if you go on the merchandise, there's a big banner that will lead you to my book website. So check out the different content that I have. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.